Is Microsoft Windows overpriced? While I may specifically have to get a Star Wars or Star Trek or some hoodie as the response to that other channel shirt, Chris was talking about, is Microsoft Windows overpriced? And he brings up a couple of good points about the fact that apps have been devalued because of the cost of the App Store from Apple and Google that allows you to purchase applications that do single functions for $1, $2, $10, a lot cheaper than what apps used to cost. And that probably is a good thing for the general market, but it lowers what we're willing to pay for an operating system. However, one of the things to remember when you're comparing the cost of Microsoft Windows to the cost of one of the Apple OSs is that Microsoft doesn't make the hardware. Because Microsoft doesn't make the hardware, it isn't subsidizing the operating system. And what I mean by that is that when Apple sells you a MacBook, the same spec PC would generally cost you less. I'm talking about the bare bones hardware, no operating system, would generally cost less by quite a bit in most cases. Now, there are different price points at which that doesn't quite work out in terms of economics, but if you're looking at overall, in general, you can get a lot more hardware, even with the operating system, on a PC platform than you do on the Mac platform. And this is because Apple has chosen a model that says, if we make the hardware seem expensive, but the software seem cheap, we can tell our audience that Microsoft Windows is expensive. And when you're talking about trying to convince people that Microsoft is the enemy, that's where you have to play the game, because Microsoft doesn't make the hardware. Apple doesn't really see its competitors as HP and IBM and Toshiba and Asus. It sees it as Microsoft. And that's because people tend to be loyal to the operating system, not to the hardware that's running the operating system. So you might be a hardcore Apple fan and would consider running it, if you could, on, a device from somebody else. But if you're running Windows, the only option you have for hardware is pretty much PCs. Yes, you can dual boot and you can boot camp and you can do those kinds of things, but most people that are hardcore Windows fans can't make that leap. I really, really liked the MacBook Air format when it was the first Ultrabook, an ultra light, heavy-duty, powerful computer that could do everything and ran Windows really, really well. But the way that you accessed the right-click still never worked for me. Like, people are like, oh, you push this button. I'm like, no, I just can't do that as fast. And the hardware was still a barrier to entry for me because it didn't behave exactly the way I wanted. And I really wanted to make it work because I wanted that form factor, but I just couldn't make the leap. Now, that's an edge case for most people. Most people don't have the feeling that I did about how that would work. Most people are more along the lines of, I really like the Apple OS, I'm not going to switch to PC because of X, Y, and Z. And because of that, there really is a Windows versus Mac OS war, not a Mac versus PC war. You wouldn't think that would be the case because you can run Windows on the Mac, but those of us who are hardcore Windows users can't. It doesn't work. That mouse thing gets us more than anything, and we don't get used to any of the alternate mice that Apple has come out with. And maybe we're just old and set in our ways, and that's the way it is. But in any event, Apple makes more money off of the hardware because they mark the hardware up, and they always sell profitable hardware. They always make sure that, you know, they have the top end of the hardware. They don't make a $129 netbook. You know, you can't get one of those from Apple. It really is that Microsoft doesn't make money off the hardware, so they make all of their money off of the operating system. And that's the reason that it costs so much. Now, one of the comments made was, maybe operating system should cost $100. Well, when you buy the operating system off the shelf, you pay a lot for Microsoft Windows. But it now supports the home license that allows you to put that on 3 machines, I believe. And they've changed licensing a couple of times, so who knows what like Windows 8 will ship with, you know, is it a single PC, is it 2 PCs, is it 5 PCs? But Microsoft has been getting better about making those work. And if you got Windows 7 at the right time during the launch, it really was priced at $60 per PC for home use. And as an OEM, it was $89 for a long time. So $89 is less than the $100 and is cheaper than what the Mac OS would cost. The problem really is that Microsoft sees that the later you are in adopting the operating system, the higher the support cost is, and therefore the more it costs. So while you might think, oh, Windows should get cheaper because it's been out for longer, it actually works out that Microsoft has figured out that people who install late tend to be more of a support headache than the early adopters, and so the price goes up. But also they can charge more because as more software gets, you know, developed specifically for Windows 7 or DirectX 11 or whatever the newest technology is, they can charge a little more because there's more demand for it. And so that's the reason that Microsoft is more expensive than Mac OS. In terms of just plain, why is an operating system more expensive from Microsoft or Mac OS as opposed to just free, that's the next video.